because because of the hygienic method that is used. There is no pollution, and a critical benefit of cremation is saving of land, which is a scarce resource these days. There are, most people know, there are 16 sanskars that ought to be performed for a person from prior to conception until death. Now, Swami Dayanand has said that there should be no further sanskars or prayer to be performed, or rituals, once a person has passed on. But I think we can raise that question with Aarti Ben after the talk. May I ask you to please write down your questions and raise them at the end. Not so much questions, but more discussion that we can have that will be beneficial to everybody. I call upon Aarti Ben to give her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madan Bhai, and namaste to everyone this evening. And thank you for logging in. Madan Bhai has given us a very lovely introduction to the topic tonight. But before I get into the topic, I want to say, let us pay homage today to our forefathers, the Girmityas, the indentured laborers who landed in this country 162 years ago. Had it not been for them, we would not have been exposed to the teachings of the Vedas and other scriptures. So our first homage goes to them. My topic for this evening is the final rites. I'm going to begin with a verse in the Rig Veda Samhita, which says, and I quote, "Place me in that deathless, undecaying world where the light of heaven shines in everlasting luster. Make me immortal in that realm where the worlds are filled with light. In that realm of bliss, let me realize my immortality." This verse very aptly introduces us to that ultimate moment in our lives, which is death. And this brings me to the topic for this evening, the final rites. What do we mean when we speak of the final rites? The final rites, or the Antyesti Sanskar, is the last of the 16 sanskars that is observed and conducted in the lifetime of an individual. To understand what a sanskar is, we need to look at what it does. We need to look at what it does for an individual. A sanskar is the building of a better man. Is this necessary? Yes, I think it is. If we follow what's happening all over the world today, we see that leaders are constantly planning to bring about better conditions for their countrymen to thrive on. Building the economy, expanding the communication network, widening roads and freeways for easier traveling, 5-star railway system so that journeys are comfortable. These constant attempts at improvement for better living conditions apply to the body of man only. But man is not only body, he is also spirit or Atma. Therefore, governments must consider plans for the development of the spirit of man, for the spirit is the real man. The civilized man, enjoying all these material benefits and resources, is also being exposed to negative qualities like violence, greed, jealousies, falsehood, possessiveness, etc. Is there a plan for a better man? A man of peace, non-violence, a man who stands up for truth and justice, a man who is in control of himself, and a man who expects nothing in return? Vedic culture has drawn such a plan. With every death is a rebirth. And with every rebirth is a chance to overcome the impressions and karma that accompany the soul when it enters a new body. These impressions, which are engraved in the nervous system, are called sanskars. A man is what these sanskars make of him. The impure sanskars, whether good or bad, accumulated by the soul in every previous life, present life, and the next life, can be erased completely while it occupies a new body, and man can become a better man through the imposition of these pure sanskars. So, from the time of conception to the time the Atma leaves the body at death, man is guided and cleansed of impurities by the sanskars performed during his lifetime. The Antyeshti sanskar is the final sanskar in the life of man. There are no other sanskars till the soul enters a new body, beginning the cycle of the 16 sanskars all over again. So when does this stop? When man realizes that he wants out of the cycle of births and deaths. When he channels his mind, words, and deeds towards achieving God realization and ultimately attaining moksha or salvation. Now, let us look at what happens when a person dies. We are talking about the final rites. When the family comes to terms with what has just happened, they rally together to prepare for the funeral. The undertaker is contracted to take care of all arrangements to have the body removed till the time of the cremation. The undertaker removes the body and transfers it to a mortuary. A priest is also engaged to conduct the final rites and to oversee that all requirements are carried out according to the laws and regulations of the country. Members of the family are allowed to bathe and dress the body in readiness for the cremation. The body is anointed with ghee and til and sandalwood paste before putting on the clothes or wrapping the body in about 5 meters of calico. Now, this happens only according to the wishes of the family or according to the wish list of the deceased. Talking about a wish list, these days many people draw up a wish list for their funeral. And this document becomes a legal document which is lodged with members of the family, instructing them on how the funeral would be carried out according to their wishes. The body is then brought home on the day of the funeral, prior to it being taken to the crematorium for cremation. The priest conducts the service at the home with prayer and recitation of the Antyeshti mantras and continues with the Antyeshti vidhi before cremation. There are options of a cremation or a burial, and that is what Madan Bhai spoke about earlier on. The Arya Pratinidhi Sabha of South Africa is beholden to the late Pandit Nardev Vedalankar, who, through his knowledge, made it possible for a very informative tract titled Cremation or Burial to be published, wherein he impresses on the best way of disposing of a body. Hindus, according to the teachings of the Vedas, have almost always opted for disposal of the body by cremation. It is the cheapest and most hygienic method of disposal. When we look at verse 15, chapter 40 of the Yajur Veda, it states, Om Vayur Anilam Amritam Athedam Bhasmantam Shariram. The soul is immortal. It is not made of the 5 elements like the body. The body will be reduced to ashes and disposed of suitably. And the mantra goes on to say, Om Kratosmara, Klibesmara, Kritamsmara. O man, performer of actions, at the time of death, think of the Supreme Self, which is God. Remember your actions and deeds and your faults. Now, the practice of burial has been advocated by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It was also practiced in Egypt with the mummification of the corpse, which was then buried in a tomb. Recently, the world witnessed the interment of the mortal remains of Queen Elizabeth as the casket was lowered into the underground crypt where it would remain forever. This system of disposing of the corpse was underscored by the belief that these religions preached, and this belief was that there will be a day of reckoning when the dead will rise to receive the reward or punishment of their actions according to their merits or demerits. From the point of view of health and hygiene, cremation is the best way to dispose of a corpse, since the body of a person who dies of illness is diseased with various kinds of germs. The diseased body, when buried, will allow the germs to pollute the atmosphere, and this gives rise to the disease spreading. The exceptions to cremation are that babies, children, and saints are buried as they are not attached to their bodies. However, during COVID-19, many of these regular practices were not adhered to, as funerals were held privately. Our priests who offered to conduct the final rites are to be commended for the manner in which they conducted the funeral, paying attention to the counseling and comforting of the bereaved families. They were the frontline workers who braved the onslaught of the virus and carried out their duties as priests as it raged throughout the world, taking with it countless lives. The norm after cremation is to observe a 3-day havan at the home of the deceased. During the pandemic, this too was reduced to a 1-day havan, which prompts me to ask, is a 3-day havan necessary, considering that the last havan is conducted before cremation? We could perhaps discuss this in our question and answer session. The Arya Samaj ensured that the Purohit was available at all times when called on to conduct a funeral during the pandemic. Many of our Purohits carried the ingredients required for the cremation with them, thereby lessening the burden of the family in mourning. At this juncture, I would also like to recall that while many of us were trying to cope with the after effects of the COVID-19 virus, we were dealt another blow during the July riots. The crematorium in Ladysmith was one of the targets of the rioters and looters and was destroyed to a very great extent. The crematorium was built by the community, many of them being members of the Arya Samaj. Today, it was brought to my attention that the Vedharam Sabha of Pietermaritzburg also built a crematorium in the 1915s, I think. And this was subsequently taken over by the municipality. Prior to all of this, cremations were carried out on the banks, on open pyres on the banks of the Amgeni River. One such spot is marked, and one can view it at the Clara State Crematorium, which is another initiative of the community for which they must be applauded. Our program director is currently in negotiations with the board of the Brixton Cemetery to begin improvements there. Perhaps he would like to elaborate on this, time permitting. I'm now going to put out to you some of the observations that I have made as a Purohit conducting a funeral. One, it is important to confirm the exact date and time when the funeral will take place. Two, the Purohit must speak to the family with humility, making them feel comfortable to interact with him or her. Number three, it is also important to explain the procedure of the final rites and to ensure that the family is able to obtain all the necessary items required for the cremation and for the Havan to follow. The next one is to speak to the family and assist them in putting together the program for the funeral, which includes persons paying tributes, etc., allowing the Purohit ample time to commence the final rites. The Purohit must remember that he or she is the person in charge of proceedings, and as such, must be able to control the mourners and maintain silence throughout the proceedings, giving it a dignified finish. After the cremation, advise the family on their choice of disposal of the ashes and remain with them till the first Havan is concluded at the home thereafter. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for being an excellent audience, and I thank the Back to the Vedas committee for hosting these series of webinars, whereby we're able to expand our knowledge of the Vedas. I would like now for us to have a discussion on the topic and for you to interact and to ask questions. And for those of us who are able to answer your questions, we will do so. Madan Bhai?
Thank you so much. Namaste, Aarti Ben. Thank you very much for that detailed explanation. I think most of our Purohits have been practicing the steps. I like that you have repeated those, the 6 or 7 steps, which is very good. I would like to call for questions and more so for debate and discussion. I see Swamiji has arrived a little bit late. Swamiji, namaste and welcome. First question from you, Swamiji, for being late. Otherwise, please, if you want to chat on the chat box, that's fine. I will read out your questions.
Namaste, Madanji. I was here from the beginning.
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot there.
No problem. No. Very good indeed, and a very important subject, because as in fact, I was chatting with Aarti Ben today, we find that as generations pass and as we get more into modern technology, an important avenue which was mentioned also is the coming of water cremations and the use of more sort of green cremations, knowing that now that with greenhouse gases and the current climate effects that we have, that perhaps more moving towards more green cremation, like water cremation, might be the way to go in the future. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, when I was in Pretoria, I did see an article in one of the papers that they're actually bringing a sort of what we call like a water furnace to Pretoria to begin water cremation. So we'll find that as time goes on, methods of disposal will change, and we've also have got to then adapt accordingly. It doesn't change the principle behind cremation, which, as Artiben said, is returning the body back to its 5 elements. But obviously, the method of that will change going ahead. So I think that will be a further discussion into how we then adapt our sanskar to be able to handle these sort of changes as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. Anyone else?
Madan Bhai, thank you. It's Karuna here. Namaste to everybody. I think, just picking up from what Swamiji has raised, I want to take us all back to the HIV/AIDS pandemic and the large number of funerals that actually took place, particularly in the African community. And the important point that Swamiji was making is with climate change, we need to think carefully about things, but equally the burial spaces in cemeteries is really running out. And just like we say that landfill sites are problematic, we don't have sufficient space, especially in the highly urbanized areas, to actually, deal with the burials. And one of the things that, they began to speak about in a lot of the municipalities was places of remembrances. And they were talking to people about cremating rather than burying. And one of the councillors actually came back and shared with me his problems with the elders in the community. And I think there's a lot of parallels and similarities. He said that all his old aunties had come and they wanted to know why he was cremating his mother and when he's going to do the rituals that they normally do. And I think while a lot of people have a Vedic funeral because it's shorter, they do quite a bit of the rituals again and again. I think we need to have a discussion about that. Why do people do 10 days and 13 days and 6 months and everything else? Because from what the speakers told us, the last rites are the last rites, and the last havan you do is during the funeral ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Karuna. Yes, I also had that as a question or a point of discussion, is the after-death prayers and rituals. And I see Giana Sukan has also raised a similar question. There are some ceremonies I have attended which speak to the number of days which the soul remains on earth. So I think this goes back to the explanation of the Atma being a preta, and remaining around the family. It then moves through its journey before being reborn. What are the teachings of the Arya Samaj around this? Artiben, I'm going to leave that up to you.
Sorry, Madan Bhai, I didn't hear that clearly.
So the question from Giana is, there are some, sorry, Giana Sukan, not the place. There are some ceremonies I have attended which speak to the number of days which the soul remains on earth, then moves through its journey before being reborn. What are the teachings of the Samaj on that one?
Acha, Namaste, Gianna, and thank you for logging in. How are you? Gianna, yes, there are a lot of beliefs that are out there, that the soul is still remaining behind. I've read that when I spoke about burial of children and babies and saints, I've read that those those souls are not attached to their bodies, so they can be buried, right? I don't know if anyone can tell me whether that is true as well. As far as the soul hanging around, I've also read, yes, that they are around for a while, right? And from the texts that I have looked up during my research for this, many of them say that with cremation, it's a sure thing that since the body is gone completely, the soul will not be able to be attached to that body again. So as far as that goes, I can't really give you 100% answer, but I see Dr. Rambilas is here. Dr. G, would you be able to say something on that?
Namaste, Artivan. Thank you for
Namaste.
that. Namaste, Madan Bhaji.
Namaste, Dr. Rambilas. Welcome.
A couple of issues that you all have mentioned. One is, what is the position of the Samaj, and when there's an antyeshti that takes place, then we have the 3 days Havan, and because of COVID, we reduced that to 1 day. Now, let's be very clear about this. The antyeshti is the final ceremony. If you read the 16 sanskars, then
Yes.
antyeshti is the 16th and final sanskar. Now, there's some practical reasons for the 3 days Havan. Firstly, in India, you have an open pyre system, and the body takes, because it is an open pyre system, it takes a long time to burn, more than a day or so. Before it smolders, then the family has to wait, right, before they get what is called the asti. Then they pick up, the bones, and they refer to them as flowers. And then they take those bones and whatever little ash they can get out of it, and go and immerse it into a river or dispose of it. According to the Vidhi, it says, even if those ashes are buried in some part of the cremation ground or somewhere,
Yes.
that's fine. Right? So why then 3 days? Simply because the 3 days allowed the family to get some closure, and the priest would get a chance then to talk to the family about, the nature of the soul, the atma, life, journey of life, etc. And the sanskars, as you mentioned, the impressions for us begin even before one is born. Therefore, we have sanskars, prenatal sanskars, because we believe when the baby is in the mother's womb as a fetus or as an embryo, even then there are sanskars being performed. And now Western science also acknowledges, and they say, the mother should be in a good mood and listen to good music, etc., which our scriptures say, for a long time have declared this. So that antyeshti is the final rites, and when the body is cremated, and people, it would be nice to have this 1 or 2 days or even a day, just to allow the family, because families hardly ever sit and talk about death. So it affords the priest the opportunity to talk to the family, and it is a time when they are looking for answers. They want to get over the grief. So it is a very appropriate moment and an opportune moment to discuss the matter of life and death and get the family to understand. Okay? So I don't know the other things that you are talking about the soul lingering, or or going away, or what happens. Look, insofar as, again, the Vedas are very simple in the sense that we all know. It says Ritancha Satyancha. The law of the universe holds true. Right? So when they perform these rites, like I said, is for closure. Right? And about the soul lingering or not lingering, the Vedas say that, like in anything else, even when this entire creation will one day end, when it dissolves, we have everything has a cycle of birth, sustenance, and then dissolution, because nothing really dies, everything is born again. So and the cycle continues. So upon death as well, people could ask many questions. What happens tomorrow if this earth, something happens and we all die? Then what happens to all the souls? So the very simple answer is like a tree. For those of you that have a book called Nature and Creation, or Creation in Nature, you can read it, and the answer is given there. It's like a seed that falls from a tree. All that happens is the seed, as soon as there is some earth that covers that seed, and there is some warmth and water which is required, that seed then is born, it sprouts forth, and it becomes a seedling, and then becomes a huge oak tree again. So like that, the soul, whenever the circumstances are right, then that soul then is reborn or reincarnates. Right? So it's a very simple and clear answer based on the Vedas, on nature, that when things are appropriate, then life takes form again. Otherwise, it's always the formless to the form to the formless. I don't know. I hope that helps.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Ramvilas. Yes, thank you very much. Quite enlightening. There's three people who have their hands up. Pandit Rina Kunan, I see you put your hand down, but please come back. Pandit Prabodh Vedalanka, second, and the third questioner will be Pandit Ratna Drudraj. Please come on. Rina Kunan, please.
Namaste. Thank you. I wanted to just ask about the ghee, the butter ghee versus vegetable ghee, and the quantities as well. We're not burning an outside pyre, so I understand the importance of butter ghee and the quality, and we give the person respect. But with butter ghee, 350 rand a bucket, is that something that we can be a bit flexible about? Thank you. That's it.
Namaste, Pandit Rina. Namaste, and thank you for that question. When you're talking about butter ghee and are you referring to using it for the cremation?
Yes.
No, then we don't use butter ghee for the cremation. We have the samagri mixed with the butter ghee at the home, and we bring that mixed samagri to the crematorium, which we use for the cremation. There is no use of butter ghee at the crematorium. The only time we use the butter ghee is just for mixing the samagri, which is 3 kilos that's required for the cremation. So 3 kilos of samagri mixed with some butter ghee. It doesn't give you a definite quantity on that. But the butter ghee is required for the havan.
Okay, no, that's fine. I know we mix it, but I thought, look, when we are mixing it, do we have to use butter ghee, vegetable ghee? And I remember hearing that the more you put, the easier it burns. So,
all right. I don't know about the more you put, the easier it burns. But what I want to say, look, everyone can't afford the butter ghee, like you say, yes. Right? Yes. So we need to take that into consideration when we are talking to the families. And we also, we can, when we interact with them, we can pick up that, would they be able to afford it or not? And we should actually allow them to use the vegetable ghee.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Rina.
you very much. Pandit Prabodh Bhai Vedalanka.
Namaste, Madan Bhai. I don't know since when I've become a Pandit.
Honorary G.
Father was a Pandit. I'm not. Thank you very much. It was just a comment I wanted to make. So, based on at APS, we get different type of experiences coming. And based on the experiences we've had in the past pertaining to this entire thing about cremation, this entire thing about in the rites that we do it, So the APS has what you call a letter of wishes, a template that you can obtain from the APS offices, and it requires you to fill in some details, your name and ID and whatever it is, where you can say that upon your demise, you wish to be cremated according to Vedic rites. So we have that template available at the office. Normally, what's done is that once you complete that template, you give one to the secretary of the APS, and then as a person, remember it's your private document, you give it to one of your family members. And the reason why I'm saying is that sometimes you get difficulty, when you have people of different ideologies at the cremation or before the cremation at the home, when someone is pushing one type of ideology and one is another. And sometimes you want it to be done according to Vedic rites, and then you get other people commenting. So if it's your if you call letter of wishes, then normally people will follow that. So just as a comment, such a document, it's a one page, I think you can get it from EPS offices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pratna, Pandit Pratna Dudraj, please come back.
Yes. Namaste, thank you. I'm asking this question because of, you mentioned, or Artiben mentioned about children or babies not being attached to their bodies, and therefore they should be, or they are cremated. I was very interested when you mentioned that, because why would you, then they are buried. So I was wondering, why would you bury the body if they were not attached to that body? Because one of the main reasons why Hindus cremate is because of detachment. And if a family chooses to cremate their child's body, is that allowed? I'm just asking. I don't know if I'm going to get an answer, but I just found it strange that if that soul is not attached, the child's soul is not attached to the physical body, why would it be buried and not cremated? Because I would think cremation would be the logical reason, because of the detachment. We're supposed to be all about detachment, and when you bury, that attachment is. And I'll give you an example. A colleague at work about 6 weeks ago, she's an African person, lost her 7-month-old baby. She had a heart condition, and this family has their family burial plot in their yard. So her baby is buried in their yard, and she is now not coming back to work because she's finding it difficult to cope. And it was her first baby. Okay, I know they don't believe in cremation, but obviously knowing that your baby is buried in your yard, you would miraculously think that, okay, maybe one day, she'd rise from the dead. I don't know, I'm just saying, but I find it strange that children would not be cremated but buried. And I wonder if families are given that option to cremate their children, because I just feel it's more hurtful knowing that your baby is buried somewhere. It just leads to that attachment when we're just supposed to be detaching from everything, that physical and material world we need to detach from. I know I'm not going to get an answer, but it's just something to think about. Yeah, because no one can actually give us an answer, but I was just curious when you said children or babies' souls are not attached to the body. Likewise, we all shouldn't be attached to this body. So why is it different? That's not
It's because I think, Pratna, it's because they're still innocent. They haven't performed any karmas as such yet. And also, I know I'm contradicting myself, because I did say that the soul comes with its impressions and karmas.
Yeah, we come in with our karmas.
So it's just that it's what I read while I was doing my research for this, that even saints, sannyasis, saints, sages, anyone, are buried. They're not cremated. But recently I watched a video of a funeral of a Swamiji in India, and he was cremated. So, there's a lot of contradictions. There's a lot of people saying this and somebody saying that. Certain books are saying this and certain books are saying. So it's just that, like you said, will we ever have a definite answer to these questions?
Yeah. Because I just find it strange, why bury when you can cremate and just detach yourself from it? And that's the whole purpose of life. Yeah, thank you.
Good, thank you. I've got three more speakers, Artiben. First, Pregaladan. Welcome, Pregaladan. Then Vishnu Bhai, Ramsarup, and finally Sanjay. Please unmute and Pregaladan, you can take it.
Namaste, Madan. I just want to ask a very simple question. I think just to echo Dr. Rambila's sentiments in terms of manifest, I just want to ask, does the soul travel or does it unmanifest immediately after death? Maybe Dr. Rambilas or Swamiji maybe can throw some light on that part of it.
Sorry, just explain that again. You are saying, does it unmanifest or does it travel?
Yeah.
No, he's saying, does it travel or does it unmanifest? Yes.
Unmanifest at point of death, yeah. Because in the anti-ST mantras, you know, one of the mantras is avyakta,
yes.
Unmanifested. Yeah. So I mean, is there a period when it unmanifested, so it happens immediately?
Yeah. Sorry, Dr. Ramila, you can come on, but I think one doesn't know Pregaladan. I've also read some texts about, you know, the soul does hover depending on the person who has passed on, depending on the personality and character of that person. He or she does hang around or hover around for whatever reason, wanting to come back into that body because of incomplete karmas. But perhaps Dr. Rambilas can take that one.
Yeah, look, namaste, and again, man, you know, look, we definitely need to have a, maybe a session when we all come together. It's a bit worrying when we are discussing these things, because look, let's understand one thing, whether regardless of whatever school of thought one may belong to, all of us believe, regardless of whether one does 10 days or 13 days or whatever, upon death, the word death means mrityu. Right? And the very first word of our Havan says Amrita. So we acknowledge that there is a part of us that is Mrita and that which is Amrita. The Mrita is the body, the Amrita is that which we may call soul, which is Amrita and doesn't die. So death means immediately, right, that the manifest becomes unmanifest. And therefore, we say the elements return to the elements, right? And of course, there is that part of it which is Amrit, and that now, whether it is born immediately or later, I don't want to repeat, you know, that it depends on circumstances. Like I say, if I said, no, it will go straight away and it's a reborn immediately, then somebody's going to ask, what if in the tide of creation, a meteorite hits this earth and everybody dies? You know, so what happens to all the souls? Where do they go to? Then all that, these are now material circumstances and will depend, you know, on whatever has happened at the time and where and how, and therefore I mentioned the tree, when the circumstances are right. So now about the baby and some people being cremated or not cremated people, like Panditji answered it by saying the Swamiji, yeah, even the Divine Life Society, the Swamiji, you know, was cremated. And there are many instances, our priests will tell you, of children that are. Now, what happens in India? You know, again, now, we must be careful now. There are certain very practical things that happen. Now, if there's a baby, you know, just imagine you spoke about the cost of butter ghee and talking about all that. How would you cremate the child? A huge pyre to be created to burn a child? So it is purely convenience that they said, well, you know, it would be easier to bury the child because the child has got a young, tender body. It'll be, you know, for the baby's body, sorry to use the word, it'll be more easily biodegradable and taken up into the earth. And imagine you putting up an entire pyre to burn a little baby body. So a lot of these things have been, you know, determined by physical and material circumstances. So be careful, let us not mix up the philosophical angle with that of practicality from time to time. depending on whether ghee is available, depending on samagri, or depending on whether water cremation will take place. Those are material factors that will from time to time change, and we will adapt accordingly.
Good. Thank you for that, Dr. Ramvilas. I think it closes that subject. Vishnu Bhai and then Sanjay, please come on. Short questions, please.
Namaste, Madan Bhai, Sanjay here. I see while we're waiting for Vishnu Bhai there, I'm a bit confused about something, and maybe I heard it wrong. I just want a quick clarity about this, about infants or babies and swamis and so on. Somewhere along the line, you mentioned about them not having a soul. Did I hear that correctly? Especially the infants. So I'm just want clarity.
Oh, you heard it incorrectly, Sanjay.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
Good.
They have a soul. We said they don't accumulate much karma and they're not attached to their bodies.
Oh, they are not. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought as much. I just wanted clarity. Thank you. Okay.
Good one, Sanjay. Vishnu Bhai.
Namaste, everyone. Madan Bhai, can you hear me, Panditji?
Yes, namaste. Welcome.
Thank you. According to Vedic sanskar from Maharishi, it is my understanding that the preferred choice of disposal of human body is through cremation. And that sets the tone for the practice throughout for our belief system. As for ghee, it is also written in that book that it is cow's ghee that is used, but there is a difference you have to understand, that in a crematorium, ghee should not be used, because what happens is that the melting of that ghee clogs the fuel, the jets of the fuel, and then reduces the temperature. So it takes a longer time for the body to be cremated because of the lower temperature. And hence, it is recommended by the operators that ghee should not be used in those. Samagris, okay. Despite that, remember that the original concept from Swamiji's, from the Maharishi, is that throughout cremation, we should be adding ghee and samagri. But because of the change in technology, those things and those practices, we are allowed to change because he has given us that permission with the formation of the Arya Samaj, when he said in his lecture in India that we are allowed through the course of history to modify and change the things that we find that is not working and to meet the economic and the demands of the society. So we are allowed to do those things. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Vishnu Bhai. So I'm going to wrap up very shortly. There's one question or comment by Oshni Hanuman that some people ask us to perform a Vedic funeral, but thereafter insist on the 10, 13 days ceremony, thereby confusing the younger generations. Personally, Oshni Ben, I refuse to do that. Because we don't. After a Vedic funeral, we offer to do a 3-day havan with bhajans and appropriate talks or a sermon, and then you wrap up on the 3rd day. Hence, I'm saying if they want to do a 13-day and 10-day, 6 months, etc., then you advise them to seek somebody else's assistance. Moving on, Shiksha as well as Gianna have requested, is there a document in the Samaj that one can prepare and plan for their last rites? Shiksha, maybe you can add to that, Aarti, but I believe you should put that into your will. If there is nobody else to discuss this with, your final wishes should be in your will. I've done that.
Madan Bhai, there is a document, Madan Bhai, there is a document available that Prabodh Bhai just spoke about now. So yeah, if you're interested on getting the document, please contact the office and speak to Rekha ji there, and she will have it emailed to you.
Lovely.
But what you're saying is right, that they should have a will drawn up as well.
Yeah. If there aren't any more comments, so I'm gonna just one personal view from my side, and it might be very controversial. Not that I like controversy. So there are some speakers touched on, the bhut and the pret and the soul hanging on. I think if I've got a simplified version of the Garud Puran, and I think those issues are contained in the Garud Puran. In the very first page of the version that I have, obviously, different authors explain things differently. In the introduction to the Garud Puran, which the version that I have, he talks about, I'm going to read this very, very quickly. Thanks to the inquisitive mind of the NRI's younger generation, which started questioning the relevance of these rituals, which apparently look absurd to them since they didn't know the rationale behind them. This work, this Puran, tries to explain the relevance and provides a boost or stimulus to the apparent illogicality. The language in here is quite bad. Most of the times it is asked as to why such horrendous details have been given, which appear downright reprehensible. Why this vivid description of the hells, and why this elaboration of the punishments for the different crimes? But when the people raise such questions, they forget one basic fact of human psychology. Now listen to this. He is saying the whole idea behind this lucid, detailed description is to raise fear against committing a wrong and unrighteous act. The recitation of this Puran after a person's death in the traditional Hindu households is recommended only for instilling this fear in the hearts of the listeners, so that even if they are on the wrong track, they may still mend their ways. Sorry, that needs to be discussed, but surely at another point in time. If there are no further questions, Artiben, any final remarks from your side?
Yes, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for everyone who took an interest in our topic tonight. I agree that there are a lot of unanswered questions. We need to really delve into that. Also, I would like to just make a recommendation that, we cannot obviously tell the family at the time of death about organ donation, but when we do our havans as priests, and when we deliver our sermons at any other function for the family, stress on organ donation, because I think that is such a wonderful way of, making sure that your body is used in the proper way. So that's my message. I feel very strongly about organ donation. And also one more point that I would have brought up, and I didn't get a chance to, was that I know many families do not go to their parlor these days to bathe the body and to dress it, because it's all left with the undertakers to do. But as far as possible, we must encourage them to go. Thank you. And namaste. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll call upon Pandit Bhagirathi to conclude with Shanti.
Madan Bhai, sorry, can we please ask Prabodh Bhai to announce next year's lectures? Because this is the last one for this year.
Thank you. So our lectures for next year, actually, we have 10 lectures in here, and they commence from February until November. We normally have it around the middle of the month, in the middle of the month on a Wednesday evening at about 7 o'clock. The links are the same. If anyone is interested, we can email to them because it's quite comprehensive, the lecture topics and that type of thing. So if somebody is interested, definitely we can forward the entire listing. So you know on what date it's happening, what's the nature of the topic, and who the speakers are. Most of the speakers, I think barring one or two, most of the speakers for next year also, from February to December, have been confirmed also together with the program director. Karuna, I'm not sure if you want me to say anything else. Yeah.
I think barring the August lecture, all lectures will be on a Wednesday. The August lecture will be on a Saturday because it's the memorial lecture for Pandit Nathdevji.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Pandit Bhagirathi.
Thank you, Pandit, and thank you to everybody for a very nice, informative discussion, very peaceful as well. And with that in mind, let us pray for peace. Om Jo Shantir Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shantir Apa Shantir Oshadaya Shantir Vanaspatya Shanti Vishvadeva Shantir Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantir Eva Shanti Sama Shantir Edi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste and thank you.
Namaste Panditji, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you Arti Ben for your research and for presenting this evening. Namaste everybody, have a good evening. Shubh Ratri.
Namaste, Shubh Ratri, everyone.
Namaste.